video that I wanted to watch and just told you guys as well. Um, so who is actually the best DPS in Classic Wrath? I'm hoping that the video kind of gives like his definitive answers to what he thinks is actually um, the best damage. When we put together our raid, our goal for our raid, we wanted to like really kind of maximize damage within a certain kind of like we wanted to have, we didn't want to just go unholy DKs basically, right? We wanted to have a really good comp, but there were definitely some classes that we favored over others. I know when I announced what our raid comp was going to be, there were several people that thought I was nuts for not having an enhancement shaman. And when I look at the logs, there are definitely some decent enhancement shamans, but we prefer to have a resto shaman for one particular reason, but it's kind of a secret. And we think actually having a resto shaman for us is actually better than having an enhancement, because we can use the enhancement shaman or the resto shaman for mana tide, stick them in a group with 2 mages, 2 warlocks, and you know their DPS just flies off the charts. And have that as one of your healers, and then instead of having an enhancement shaman, you can have an unholy DK. So we have like an extra unholy DK. We have 3 unholy DKs. A lot of raids only have 2, and then they have a frost. We have 3 unholy DKs of frost. We have 2 mages, or sorry, 2 mages, 2 rogues. I should probably just post a link to what our actual comp is, but it is working out extraordinarily well for us. Now, as far as who is actually the best DPS in Classic Wrath, that's kind of hard to say without having to watch this video to see what he says. If you were going to ask me, like when we talked about, we've got a 26-man roster, and we were like, what do we want that 26 person to be? Because we want someone that you can just add in to fill in for basically any DPS role. Because we've got 2 hunters, we've got two rogues. So if we go down a rogue, it's not that big of a deal. What do we want to come in off the bench that would be a great DPS class that could basically fill in for whatever DPS we were missing that one day? So if we're down 1 hunter, we can throw in this class. If we're down 1 rogue when we've got 2, we can throw in this class. The problem with some raids is they have 1 hunter. If they go down a hunter, they have to basically pug a hunter. We didn't want to do that. So I would say, if you're going to ask me what is the best overall DPS class for a raid, if you're going to look for a like 26, 27, if you're going to have a 26 or 27 man roster and you want to add a couple of extra DPS, in my opinion, it would be probably Unholy DK. Because you don't ever need to sit there. I'm talking if you're min-maxing. You don't need to, it could be whatever. It could be an enhancement shaman. But if you're looking for like the best, which is what this video is, I would probably personally say an Unholy DK is the best option for your 26, 27 man. If you want to just add an extra DPS to your raid, Unholy DK to me is the best. Now that doesn't mean that a good affliction warlock isn't going to do the job, or another demo locks are phenomenal as well. Everybody before Wrath came out, everybody was just taking 1 demo lock. I would not be surprised, I said this before Wrath came out, that I would not be surprised if you see people stacking demo locks and unholy DKs, because they just press W and keep going. So and they do tremendous DPS. So let's see what Hamsterwheel says. If you're not familiar with Hamsterwheel, I will. If you're watching this video on YouTube, let me know first of all what you think the best DPS class is in the game in the comments. But also, I'll leave the links to his video as well, so you can go down there after you watch this video, give him a like. We'll watch the video first, make sure it's a good video. But all of his videos pretty much, or a lot of his videos pretty much are. Anyways, let's watch this video.
And today I would like to delve into some data that I checked out on Warcraft logs. You see, before Wrath Classic launched, there was a lot of talk about which...
There was a lot of people that were talking about enhancement shamans. We did not take an enhancement shaman because I don't think they're any better than a warlock or an unholy DK or whatever. So I didn't except for having a second, like a backup lust in case our resto wasn't there. But we decided to take a resto shaman for the Manatide. So
Which classes would be S tier DPS and which classes would do horribly? Would Fury Warrior fall flat on its ass right from the get-go and only shine in the later stage of the game?
all these excuses just to have one less competitor for your tier token. You're that's a kappa, right? We have 4 warlocks in my raid. Like we took an extra warlock. Okay, it is a kappa. Okay, we took an extra warlock, knowing that hey, that doesn't matter to me. Like when I'm looking at my raid, I want what I feel is the best comp that we can possibly run with the people that we have, and add those people, but then build around that. And we I didn't even hesitate to say I want another warlock or whatever, right? Like we just want to be able to keep pressing W and move forward.
Game, or is it actually not that bad? Well, let's find out. So before we check out the data, here is mostly what the DPS tier list for phase 1 of
Let's see. If you were to ask me before the game launched, what I thought of this tier list, I personally would have thought Arcane was lower. And I probably would have said that Arcane Mage was probably A tier. I probably would have said, I know for sure I would have said Unholy DK would have been S tier, I think. S and A tier for both Unholy and Frost, maybe. I would have thought Unholy would have been higher though. I would have thought Elemental was lower, but I know we talked about this on stream. I said that don't be surprised if Elemental is a little bit better than people think because the boss fights are going to be so short. I think a lot of people are looking at Elemental and going, okay, over a long fight, they're not going to do much damage. But I think because people are killing bosses so fast, we said this before Wrath, that we thought that the Elemental Shaman was probably going to be doing better than D tier, which is what some people were putting them as. But this one here is probably about where I thought they would have ended up. Maybe C tier. To be honest, I would have thought Boomy would have been higher, not C tier. I would have thought for sure they would have been higher than Elemental. Fire Mage is probably right where I would have thought they would have been. Having said that, though, we were talking about this data in Guild, and somebody mentioned that Fire Mages are not actually doing that much worse than Arcane. But I didn't think Arcane would be S tier right off the bat, so... Destro, right about where I would have thought they were. I mean, Frost Mages, you don't bring them. But yeah, I would have thought, which is the one that surprises me here. I would have thought Boomy would have been higher for sure than C. I would have put them up in like at minimum B tier, maybe A. And Feral Druid probably S or A tier as well. Probably more A tier. I don't know that I would have thought Feral, although we had a Feral in TBC, but that's different, who was kicking ass at DPS. But I don't know that I would have put it S tier, but definitely A tier for sure. So that's basically the changes I would have made.
of Wrath Lich King Classic looks like. Some people might
And Arms better than Fury. No, definitely not worse than Fury, but that's how they've got it here anyways. So
disagree here and there, but this is the general consensus of the player base, and one that, based on the many classes that I played
pretty
on
close.
private servers, I thought was pretty darn accurate. So the classes that should dominate the DPS meters in Naxxramas should be both Affliction and Demonology Warlocks, Arcane Mages, Frost DKs, Assassination...
Demonology Warlocks is probably S tier because they're going to be fed gear at the beginning. I don't know that they're going to be S tier all the way to the end. They're definitely, as we've seen, they are definitely S tier though right now.
Rogues, Enhancement Shamans, and Feral Druids, right? Well, let's have a look at a few boss fights in Naxxramas. Starting off with Patchwork, which is a pretty straightforward tank and spank fight where the DPS can...
How old is this video? October the 13th. So he's getting this off of Warcraft logs. Let's hold on. Okay, so this is the one that we were looking at earlier. Is this basically the same thing? No, one of the rogues is definitely higher. So this is the one that I pulled up just before we earlier when we started talking about the video. Both. Oh, look at the discrepancy between like a really good rogue and a really bad assassination rogue. Um, like this is what made me pull it up is when somebody in the guild said that fire mages were actually doing on par with arcane mages. Like that's actually pretty, kind of nutty actually. I don't think anyone saw that this early in the game that they'd be doing about the same damage. I will be honest, I thought hunters were going to be a little bit higher than this. I thought hunters might be a bit of a surprise than what this is. So I'm guessing that this is more recent than what he's looking at. And I was wrong about ferals. I thought ferals were going to be like top 5 or 6 in damage. I did not see them down here, but look at the discrepancy. This is when you can tell that a class's rotation is probably pretty difficult when you have this much of a discrepancy between the poor players and the really good players. Let's see. Oh, Fury Warrior is better than Arms off the bat. That I didn't see actually. I thought Arms was going to be a little bit better than Fury. And I thought maybe Affliction Warlocks would be. Nah, they're both tied. It's pretty close.
Pretty much go all out with barely any movement or tons of ads to worry about. And well, the logs are actually fairly similar to the average tier list that sprung up before the release.
Hold on. Yeah, we can see through the more recent one though. Fire mages are actually a lot closer to arcane according to the most recent data than what they are on this list. So people were definitely, I mean, as long as like this one here that I'm showing you is the most recent data. So if this is the most recent data, you could actually argue that fire mage, and arcane are almost tied basically. The top arcane mages are still doing slightly more, but keep in mind that these are arcane mages that are probably getting innervates. I don't know that the fire mages are getting innervates. Possibly. But what if they're not? I mean, they probably are, but maybe they're not. I don't know. There's all sorts of circumstances we'd have to take a look
You
at.
see Demonology and Affliction leading the pack, which were indeed predicted to be S tier DPS. Then in third we have Assassination Rogues, also a pretty good prediction based on the tier list. Afterwards we have Enhancement Shamans, and yes, that was also expected to be an S tier DPS early on.
But it's lately, and this is something that we like. There was a video that I made, and I literally had a guy come into my stream and just lambaste me because we did not take an enhancement shaman. We took a resto for our lust, and they were like, "You're effing nuts. Enhancement shaman is the best DPS in the game. Why would you not have an enhancement shaman?" And we had our reason. We wanted mana tide for our casters, and it just pumps their damage like crazy. In fact, if you go and look at these guys, I think you're probably going to find a lot of raids. You're going to find out that mana tide is extremely important. That's just my opinion, but what the fuck do I know? That's why we took a resto for our shaman instead of enhance. And I had several people say, you're nuts. If you're going to take one resto, you should take an enhance. And my reasoning was, why would I take an enhance when I can use that DPS spot for another warlock or an unholy DK or something like that? And the explanation or the answer I got was resto shamans are garbage for healing. That's not actually true. Resto shamans are not bad healers in Wrath. They're actually pretty decent, and they still bring mana tide to the table. So anyways, Our Resto Shaman is actually a hybrid. So he'll go Resto Shaman if we need 5 heals, but we basically have decided we don't need 5 heals anymore. We're just going to go down to 4. And he's basically going to play a Resto Elemental hybrid. And again, this is something that I kind of kept to myself. Like we weren't throwing this out there, but I think a lot of people are starting to see this now. Where you go down Resto to Manatide, stick him in your group with 2 mages and 2 warlocks, your top caster DPS, and let him give them Manatide so they're not life tapping or whatever. They can pump more as mages, and then otherwise he's just doing elemental damage. Sure, it's not going to be as much damage um, as a enhanced shaman, but the difference in damage that those 4 casters are doing vastly outweigh the difference between an enhancement's damage and a elemental shaman's damage. That was basically our justification for it, and it's worked tremendously well for us.
Now, after that, which I find to be pretty interesting, is that Destruction Warlocks did really well on Patchwork.
Does your Skiff? Does your off spec elemental go down mana to Manatide at all? You may see it like this is something I was like we were not going to tell anyone, and a lot of people like I look at a lot of other raids and they don't do it at all. So um I think I think the cat's going to be out of the bag soon. You're going to see a lot of guilds doing this. So
Now, Destruction is often seen more as the PvP oriented spec, but it turns out that it can definitely slap in PvE as well. Funny, because this is considered a D tier DPS, but let's see how well they perform on other fights.
sorry, what is he talking? What class is he talking about now?
But it turns out that it can definitely slap in. Often see more as that Destruction Warlocks did
Oh,
really
Destruction.
well on Patchwork. Now, Destruction is often seen more as the PvP oriented spec, but it turns out that it can definitely slap.
Destruction's
in PvE
actually
as
not
well.
doing
Funny,
too
'cause
terribly.
This is considered a D tier DPS, but let's see how well they perform on other fights. In position 6 and 7, we have Arcane Mages and Unholy DKs. Arcane Mages were expected to be S tier DPS, so once again the list is fairly accurate. They're not on top, but they're not too far off.
Again, this list that he's working off of, these are going to change throughout as people get geared as well, right? So keep that in mind. But the recent data shows that fire mages are actually a lot closer to arcane mages than what his is showing. So the data changes every week. So the updated data shows that fire mages and arcane mages are actually relatively close. But I guarantee you that very few raids are actually running any fire mages at all. So this is
Another thing worth noting is that people expected Frost to be
so you don't have Manatide when you go Ellie.
S
I
tier
that
and
I think that's what most people are doing. Like they have Resto, but then when they don't need that healing, they have their Resto shamans swap over to Elemental for extra damage, obviously. But we've found that the Manatide totem does more to increase your raid damage than the elemental shaman specking into deep elemental rather than just going down to whatever points he can get it out of it and doing as much damage as he can with a scuff spec. The extra damage that you're getting from your mages and warlocks that are in the same group, the extra damage that they can do with Manatide Totem far outweighs the damage that the elemental shaman's doing, specking all the way down. All the way down. So, and I've looked at other raids like with comparable warlocks and mages, and our mages and warlocks just literally pump.
Unholy A tier, yet here we are with Unholy doing more DPS, and when it comes to top DPS, they're actually second right after Demonology Warlocks. And well, as suspected, the Fury Warriors did very poorly, placing third to last with Arms and Gladiator, that is protection, being the last 2 spots. Before Wrath Classic and on Wrath Private Servers, it was well known that things like Retribution Paladins and Fury Warriors are not good early on and would only shine later on in things like ICC, and these logs definitely reflect that notion. So I could talk all day about more of this, but generally the tier list so far is pretty accurate. But let's go to a more AoE oriented fight, Noth the Plaguebringer. So this is the data so far that we have on.
Well, let's see. Let's so the one that I was looking at, actually, you know what? That's something This is for all bosses. So let's actually see what it says on Patchwork. That's something I did notice. So yeah, you can still see that there's still some changes. Fire mages are a little bit further behind, but not as much as on his list. Let's see, that was on Patchwork. Let's see. So let's see. Unholy DKs are slightly ahead of Frost. Not too much though. Not too much. And let's see. Look at this Feral Druid. Look how long this tail is here. That is, man. And Frost Mage is doing more damage than Ret Paladins. Yikes! Fuck. Yikes. Destruction. And let's see what he's. Sorry, what did you say? Not the Plague Bringer. So this is now the updated list for more of an AoE spec. Let's see how it compares to what he's at. Yeah, there are some changes. The rogue is slightly lower. Unholy DKs. Unholy DKs, like I said, if you're gonna look for like a 26 person to fill in case somebody can't make it, if you can find a really good unholy DK, that's just a really solid addition to your raid. Because they can fill in anywhere. Any DPS goes down, add an unholy DK. As long as you've got all your buffs, if you've only got one rogue and your rogue goes down, you're probably going to want to refill with a rogue. But a lot of raids are bringing 2 rogues, 2 mages, 2 hunters, stuff like that. I have seen some raids that only bring 1 hunter, but the problem, if your hunter goes down, you're probably going to consider pugging an actual hunter to fill in for him.
And
we didn't want to pug a lot.
Exists out of demonology warlocks and assassination rogues. So yeah, it is a really good time to be a warlock, and even in a more AoE oriented fight, the destruction warlock, which again is considered a D tier DPS, did really, really well. And high up there once again are enhancement shamans, arcane mages, and the unholy death knights. The bottom is once again filled with...
Where's our enhancement shaman? Enhancement shaman now is, what is that, 7th? They're now 7th, sort of on the list here. Not bad, like that's not bad, but it kind of reaffirms that we decided to take another affliction or another unholy DK instead of having an enhancement shaman. It'll be interesting to see where enhancement shamans are going forward. Like they've, in the last couple of weeks, they've already slipped down a few spots according to his list, which was, this video's a week and a half old or something like that, and this is like the most recent data. So it'll be interesting to see if they climb or if they fall a little bit behind. So
warriors, subtlety rogues, retribution paladins, and frost mages. Now let's have a look at one more fight, and then I want to focus on how things have changed from TBC to Wrath of the Lich King. So here's the last fight, Kel to Zed, which has 2 phases where first you focus on ads and then you focus mostly on the boss. And well, once again, demonology warlocks, affliction warlocks, and assassination rogues are in the top 3. And once again, the underdog and the one that probably surprised some people, destruction as number 4. Oh yeah, a lot of purple on top of the logs when you look at the fights. Also, we have survival poking through and claiming the number 5 spot on this fight, and so far the tier list is once again fairly accurate, with survival being the top pick for hunters, for Naxxramas, whereas beast mastery is the worst spec of them all for PvE. And again, at the bottom we have all 3 warrior specs, our frost mages, subtlety rogues, and retribution paladins. Also funny to see here that
again, both fire and arcane mage very, very similar, to be honest. I mean, they're behind elemental on KT in that particular fight. It's just one fight, but still feral druids. Like I'm not kidding you. Feral druids, probably the toughest rotation of any class. Feral druids, and you can see the discrepancy here between the really good ones and the really bad ones.
That none of the mage specs scored really well here, with even arcane being kind of below average. Also, Shadow...
Can I bring my logs? Yeah, I've been pugging for the last 2 weeks, but I can bring them up if you want.
Priest here did a lot better than the previous 2 fights, so that's kind of interesting to see. So then, how much has the top DPS changed going from Phase 5 TBC to face one Wrath of the Lich King. Well, here's an overall look first of all boss fights in Naxxramas. Our top 5 is as followed. Number 1, the Demonology Warlock. Number 2, the Assassination Rogue. Number 3, Affliction Warlock.
What the heck, Aloe? We decided to go with a 26-man roster, warm, wet grip, and just to kind of keep the, I don't know, keep everybody happy. I don't want to go and tell someone, hey, you're sitting this week. So if it allows the raid to be kept happy, keep the raiders happy, I just tell them, hey, listen, I'll sit. And I've told them all, hey, listen, I might have a rotation that I start, but if somebody is like, no, I want to raid every week and it's their turn or whatever, I just told them, hey, listen, if you want to raid, I'll sit. It's not, I just want to basically keep the raid happy. It's more important to me that the raid does exceptionally well. We have 4 really good warlocks in our raid, and I happen to be the 4th. So, and generally in TBC, we always, every single week, had one person that was away or like not able to raid that week. So that's why we went to a 26-man roster. Tomorrow, we don't have anyone that said that they're not going to be there. So there's a fairly good chance that I won't be raiding tomorrow with my guild's raid. And again, I want to be able to get in there because I know I can parse really high. The guild that I raided with this last week, it was their first time full clearing, and there was like 3 or 4 bosses that they weren't able to kill before. So it was entertaining though. Like it was like, hey, this is kind of cool. Like this guild's super excited. They killed Sarth and they were like super excited. They killed what's the name? I can't remember the name of the boss. The one where you like mind control. I can't remember the name. Anyways, they were super excited. It's kind of neat to be there for that, to see their excitement. Whereas I've cleared Nax dozens of times between classic and TBC now, right? So it was kind of neat to see that excitement and be there when they got their first KT kill. It was kind of neat.
Number 4, Unholy Death Knight, and number 5, the Enhancement Shaman. However, the average data of all bosses in Sunwell Plateau show a very different picture. Warlocks are still on top, so not much has changed.
Go Warlocks!
It was Destruction that reigned supreme at number 1, and Fury Warriors are number 2. So you can see just how much Fury Warriors have fallen off from being a number 2 DPS in the last raid in TBC to now one of the worst DPSers in Naxxramas. But as I said before, Fury Warriors will no doubt shine in the later stages of Wrath Classic. Number 3 goes to the Demonology Warlock, so a very strong pick in late TBC and in early Wrath. So if you played a Demonology Warlock in TBC, and now you also play one in Wrath Lich King, I'll
show you, Worm, as soon as we're done the video. We'll look at the logs
the Beast
last week.
Hunter. So the Hunter spec that looked like the most potent in late TBC has also fallen off hard and is now not even considered a viable raid spec anymore. And we have Combat Rogue in 5. And overall, Combat Rogues are not doing that bad in Naxxramas, but it's clear that Assassination is the way to go for the best DPS in Naxxramas. Another thing I would like to point out as a sucker for the Boomy class is that balanced druids, on average, are doing better than TBC, but on all fights they scored kind of in the middle. So nothing super amazing, but definitely a lot better in TBC and a whole lot better than in Classic Vanilla. So with all this data being shown, I would just like to say
who's
that
the
you should
best?
take this with a pretty big grain of salt.
He's supposed to.
It's fun to see the logs and see which classes did better.
The title was, so who is actually the best DPS in Classic? I gave my answer. I think all around Unholy DKs are phenomenal. If you want to speed run, get an Unholy DK. If you want to just burst down bosses, Unholy DKs are right. I think Unholy DKs all around are the best DPS in the game right now.
And it's fun to see how well this data reflects the DPS.
The player, of course, matters more,
this data
but
is of course driven by people. For instance, Feral Druid is a very potent spec in Wrath, but its rotation is much more complex than, let's say, an Arcane Mage. So if most of the people who play Feral DPS aren't actually good at nailing that rotation, then it might seem that Feral itself is pretty bad. But in reality,
we talked about that when we looked at the
like,
list, right? I said that you can see the discrepancy between the top ferals and the worst ferals, and a lot of them are actually closer to the bottom than the ones that are at the top. If you have a really good feral druid, you're you're in luck because that's going to help increase the damage. Same as like I don't know. What are the classes kind of a hard? People told me that Affliction Warlock's rotation was difficult. I mean, it took me a little bit to get used to it, but I'm not finding it particularly hard. But Feral Druids are apparently the hardest. I've never played Feral Druids, so I don't actually know. Don't quote me on that.
And of course, most of the sweaty tryhard people who want to have the highest DPS parses probably moved over to a class or spec that was predicted to be an S tier in Naxxramas.
No, I was
So
already
for
playing
instance,
it.
someone who might have played a Fury Warrior in late TBC because they love the competitive nature in terms of dealing damage might have made the switch to, let's say, a Demonology Warlock. So yeah, lots of factors that influence this data, but I thought it was just fun to check this out and see if those tier lists actually hold up. And as a matter of fact, they do quite well. Oh, and quick shout out to Ruggs, by the way. His tier list was one that I liked a lot.
Rugs
and
is
one that I was quote unquote rooting for.
if you guys don't follow Rugs, you should go follow Rugs. He's like one of the gurus of Wrath. You can find him on YouTube. This isn't his video, but we've watched his videos before. He's extremely knowledgeable when it comes to classes and raid comps and stuff like that.
So go subscribe to him if you haven't already. And well, thank you for watching this video. Perhaps I'll do this again later down the line to see how the DPS of all the classes change as we go through the phases. For now though, I want to thank you for checking this out. I'm Hamsterwheel and have a good one.
Okay, so we're gonna pause it there. As far as like the video itself was supposed to be let's see, where is it? The video itself was supposed to be
Hey guys, Hamsterwheel here with
like who's actually the best DPS in Classic Wrath. I don't think he actually really. I think he just kind of went over the list and said, "Here are the lists." But yeah, if you're gonna ask me if you want to play like the best all-around DPS, I would say Unholy. Just because if you want to play speedrun, I think you're gonna find in speedruns, Unholy DKs are the most sought after class probably, to be honest. And you already saw it with the Race of World First, right? So, they just it was the best class to be able to get down. If you looked at the boss kill times though, they were lagging behind. Like there were other guilds that were definitely killing bosses way faster, but as far as being able to get like through trash and stuff like that, they just stacked like 10 Unholy DKs and just kind of breezed through everything. So I like Unholy DKs. I like locks, both Demo is actually performing better than Affliction on not only boss fights but also on trashbacks. Like they're better for AoE damage and stuff like that. So for speed clearing, I think you're going to see people stacking Demo locks too, not Affliction, ultimately down the road. So let's see. I'm going to end the video there. But for those of you that are watching the stream, I will go over our logs just because it's kind of something interesting to go on. I don't want the video to go on for too long. If you're watching the video on YouTube, definitely go to Hamsterwheels, give him a like on his video, and subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. The guy's been putting out videos for years. If you want to talk to me about raid comps or anything like that, kind of my idea was behind how our raid works, you're more than welcome to come join me on my channel. I stream 6 nights a week from Tuesday to Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Play World of Warcraft nonstop, basically. Again, it starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, and right now it's what is that? It's 8 a.m. So you can see how long we go for. Anyways, I'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, like and subscribe if you want. I'll talk to you again in the next video.